Well, welcome to the Node.js Next 10 meeting for March 3rd, 2025. We'll follow our standard approach of going through the issues that were tagged in the issue created in the repo, which was issue number 333. Oops, here, I just want to copy. Okay. We'll do that later, I guess. So, does anybody have any announcements before we dive into the agenda? Okay, so no announcements this week. So we will go into the agenda. The first one is the 2025 survey. And I see, Jean, you submitted a starting base set of questions. You want to lead the discussion? If you're speaking, you are on mute.
Sorry, I was looking for a room. I didn't
Okay.
heard what you said. Sorry, guys.
I was just saying we're looking at 2025 survey number 330. You'd, I think, submitted a base list of questions.
Yep. Assuming a few of them didn't have time to update them since last week or 2 weeks ago. I think, Marco, you added a few comments, or I think at least I saw some notification from someone there, I think. So
I added a one or two yesterday.
maybe it was you then. I didn't have time to check that. Yeah.
I guess like they are like based off of the existing ones from last year,
Yep.
right? And
Yep.
did you one thing I didn't have time to go through, is it like a copy of them, or like where things changed? Just might be
So
worth
it's a
highlighting the things that were changed.
copy globally. I did a few comments on a few of them. For example, how long have you been working with Node.js? It was from 0 to 10. Now do we want to have 0 to 15? For the kind of organization, I remember we discussed to change university to academia to encompass pretty much everyone, including school and other kind of academic area. Um, I did, yeah. I think I did one, or I don't remember if we had this one. I have to check now. The sector of the company you operate, but the main stuff, it should only be asked if people answer, let's say, company or startup, not the other field. Based on that, I have a couple list of different points. Do we want more? That's another question. I removed a few of them. And I remember we discussed during this, I think the summit or maybe during a next 10, do we want to keep everything development, for example, of API with microservices, serverless, and others? So it was a big question. I didn't have time to go through all the previous next 10 meetings, so that's something I have to do. And the main question is, do we want to keep also the answers that got less than, let's say, 1% of answers? Or just group that and be agreeing, okay, so for example, people using ASDF for version manager, if it's less than 1%, do we want to keep that only part of others, or do we want to have the choice for them to select it?
That is a good question. Although, like, what if it's grown this year? But then the question is, maybe there's other ones that have grown. I guess it would depend how big was, like, say, that 1% to the others, right? If
Yeah, no, yeah, that's why I was to go through, but I was mostly thinking for a value on 100, only one people selected, really less than 1% of people use that, where people used, let's say, Yarn and NVM, let's say NVM up to 60%. I
oh,
remember from some of them were like 0.0 something.
right.
So is it
Yeah, I was
something?
just wondering, like, if other was like 5%.
Yeah, no, this one makes sense. And 0.9 or even 1%, it makes sense. Is still 20% of the other one. Yes. On
Yeah,
this one, speaking about 1% and the, let's say, top three or the three other are like 40, 30, 20.
yeah. No, it's definitely a good point. I'm just looking at that just to see at the survey to see what the number was. Oh no, that's the wrong one. Sorry. I'm just scrolling down. Take a little while. I don't know if anybody else has any thoughts on like major changes, because I think the plan was to discuss it at the collaborator summit, so there's still lots of time to discuss and tweak and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, from the guidelines, like remove the open questions and change the like experimental features and features people are excited about. But overall, we can reuse like 70% of what exists. Or
Yeah, I think the two questions, it was interesting to see like the experimental and the new features. Like it is interesting to see if people are using those. So just updating them to be the current ones. I also thought like in terms of the questions, project priorities and direction, well, maybe my thought was like it'd be interesting to know like have you tried Node.js's support for TypeScript, right? Like I think that one came out. It would be good to take some of the pain points from last time and a question to see if people think they've been addressed would be interesting. So like some questions about TypeScript and ESM, like what are your remaining pain points for ESM after the work that was done this year? Or
yeah, that totally makes sense.
yeah. So I guess we may not, discuss the whole thing this time, but like what's kind of our next step? So John's got the base questions in there. Do we just want to work in the doc on like the questions, or we could say like let's reserve 10, 20 minutes in this. There's probably one more next 10 meeting before the collaborator summit to work on
Yep.
the doc, or what do people think is a good idea for, or just do it async in the issue? What do people think is the right way to get to
I think
something which is ready for the collaborator summit anyway?
I think it would be also interesting just if we can finish that at the end of the next meeting. That way we have something close to 1 week. Then we can share the document and the PR to all collaborators to not have to go through 25 questions live to everyone. And
Right.
even if everyone won't have the time or just want to check it before, a few people may come and just say, hey, I think this question is not the best one or something like that. So at least people will be able to have a preview and be aware of that. So.
Yeah, so the goal is to get it done by March 19th, which is the end of next meeting. So do we think we need like a session just to work on that, or do we work on it async and then maybe reserve time in the next meeting to do that?
My side, I think we can work async and keep next meeting only for that and maybe a few other topic for the collaborator summit.
Okay.
But yeah.
I mean, if we cannot get it done, then we can probably add like a extraordinary session to just do
Sure.
the survey. Like we
Okay.
have done this in the past, and this
Yep.
is something that should be on the table. Like last minute, if we see we're not ready, we do
Yep.
like 1 hour session and we make it.
That sounds good. Okay, so I just took that in the minutes. So basically, we're going to do it async, keep most of the next meeting to finalize, and if that doesn't work, we can schedule another dedicated session, right? Sounds good. Okay, so I think then we've got a good plan. Yeah, people can go through, comment, suggest questions, whatever. Set of base questions for collaborators. This is number 329. And so this is, Jean, you put this together as well, I think. So this is to expand the base questions, right? And these are ones where we're like, hey, we want to help promote the collaborators,
Yep.
right?
That's really a basic one. Main idea was at least to give a basic set of questions, nothing really fancy. We can, if people have some idea, if we want to keep everything like corporate, I would say, or something like that, or do we want to also add a few fun question or something like that? But the main idea really on my side was really to split that on knowing a bit more about the collaborator, what they are doing on their daily basis, not even related to Node.js, and one part about collaborating on Node.js. It's a base of question. People can choose to answer all of them or just one or two of them on each category, but it gives a small playground to start. But if you see other point or even categories of question that would make sense, feel free to comment, discuss everything.
As I was reading through the questions, my thought is like we want to make this as lightweight as
Yeah.
possible in terms of like we don't want to have somebody who has to edit and write up all these things. I wonder if it could be like, please PR in a paragraph, which is like what would show up in this collaborator outline and could be promoted on Twitter or X
Yep.
or Blue Sky. Here's some questions that would make sense for you to cover, right? And then people
Yep.
could choose from a subset of like those questions are great because they give people an idea what to think about.
Yep.
Then it would be up to them to write a paragraph.
Yep.
And the only thing we'd really need to do is like when it's PR'd in, we'd have to like look at it and say, it doesn't say they're the king of Node.js or something like that. I mean, right? So it's just, we'd read through it. It's like, okay, that's sane. Yep. Okay. And then it could land and then it could be used in those promotions and stuff like that.
Element ID.
So like I think, okay, so I'm going into PR. Like I'd almost think like we could take what you have. So that's under ambassadors interview.md, right?
Yeah, I don't remember why I put that into ambassador, but I can change that into a new folder or something like that.
Like I almost think at this point it might be good to say like let's write up a doc which is the collaborator promotion program or something like that, right? And it could say like we run this collaborator promotion program. What do we do? That means we ask people to PR in a paragraph. Then and that paragraph, so some suggested questions to cover are in blah. And then what do we do with those? They show up here. We pick one every month to read or every week to retweet or to promote, like something that describes the program.
Yep.
And includes these questions. That sound because then it would be like, okay, does everybody agree we're going to do this? And because it'd be clear like this is what we're going to do, and then we could start doing it if people agree.
Makes sense.
Okay. So I wonder, so in the yeah, I'm not quite sure that would fit in the ambassador repo. Probably in the next 10 repo to start.
Sorry, my connection dropped. Sorry.
Yeah, I was just saying, I'm not sure that belongs in the ambassador repo, but like maybe in the
Yeah.
next 10 repo as what do we have in terms of directories?
Not all, but I can create a new one. Could be social or just even collaborator, I guess.
Maybe like initiatives.
Our initiative makes sense.
Yeah, and then there could be like a, collaborator promotion program. And then, I think at some point it would make sense to move that possibly into the Node core docs. But like that's a good starting point. We can discuss and land something, and then we can get broader review from there.
Yep, makes sense. Just keeping a note on that, so
Okay.
I don't forget. But initiative is a good name.
Okay, sounds good. Okay. Anything more we want to discuss on that one before we move on? Okay, if not, we have the collaborator summit issue. I think on that one, we'd already discussed like different sessions. I'm just wondering if people have submitted sessions, still working on it.
So Jacob submitted his 2 weeks ago. I have mine written, not submitted yet, so I have to do that.
Okay.
And Marco just did it 3 minutes ago, so I refreshed. I was going
Okay.
to missing your one, so okay, I'm the only one missing. Okay.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a checklist in here. So issues. So can I get this? And get this. Oops. Nope. I'm just putting this in the minutes slash, and I can put it in the document here. So let me next 10. So we got session for next 10 survey. Then we've got right the follow-ups and updates. I like that one as a and then this actually can and I can make this a checkbox, I think. See how that works. I always get these checkboxes wrong for some reason. That's not going to work so well. Anyway, okay. I'll just put submitted. Ah, submitted. Submitted. And then what was the title of the one you were going to do, Jean? Just maybe it's in the minutes here.
So it was, sorry, I was muted. Pain point for collaborator, but I think a better naming would be improving collaborator experience.
Okay. Improving collaborator experience. No, so. Okay, and right. Okay, so I think that covers, so that sounds good. I don't see a huge number of sessions so far, so at least now there won't be too much contention, I don't think. Any other thoughts since then in terms of like other sessions that might make sense at the Collaborator Summit for this team to lead or? Okay, if not, then I think that's good. We can go to the next one, which is the Ambassador Program message and topics for additional content. I know we discussed this and agreed to leave it on the agenda. Okay, so there's a suggestion from Brian in terms of like some stuff around you might not need a dependency anymore to cover the different things in Node.js, which is I think that's related to something that I vaguely remember us discussing, like promoting a bunch of the new stuff that's there. So that actually, so that one fits in. I think on that comment, it might be like a good response was like, that sounds interesting, Brian. Do you want to PR it into the list, right?
Yep.
Okay. Sounds interesting. Yeah, I'm just going to say, would you be interested in PRing into oh, oops. Contributing. So okay, so that I just made that comment there. In terms of discussion and keeping it on the agenda, is there anything else? Like I can't remember exactly. I could look at the minutes while we kept it on the agenda last time, but let me see. Just go into the minutes, meetings. So it says, Marco, you pinged the collaborators. It was also like possibly should we merge this with the survey discussion and also messages that we should be sharing, right?
Yeah, I think that that's shown basically no response.
So should we leave this? I could say like we'll leave this, just so we know where it stands. I could say, Mark, spell your name right, it works. We'll cover this topic at Collaborator Summit. So we'll leave open until there and either next steps based on discussion there or close this as done. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, okay, we can defer this decision a little bit.
Yeah, I think like you can cover it there. If some actionable things come out of it, great, we can add them to the issue, keep it open. I think otherwise we could just say, well, we've asked people, we've reminded them, like, so we'll just leave it at that. And then, as people like Ben make suggestions or they ask like, how could I work with them? We can point people to that place to PR stuff in and close this particular issue. Okay, let me go back to the minutes here. Actually, I did want to just if you bear with me, I won the last issue. I just want to paste it so that we have okay. We have oops. Sorry, I'm just making sure that got the minutes into the. Okay, discuss will be covered. In Collab Summit. Okay, follow-on discussion from survey perf and diagnostics. I don't know if we have anything to discuss on that one. I wonder if there's any, so okay, so following discussion, so I guess I think we'll just say no update. The corporate Node.js usage stories and studies, I just kind of added next up after we close on ambassador program ramp up. Is there any value in maybe trying to get, like, explain that in the collaborator summit as part of like the follow-ups and quick updates? Get some feedback, or I mean, I don't know what people think on that. Like, do we need to do more work first?
That's a
I'm
good
not
question.
sure. Yeah.
I think it would also need like a volunteer who's going to be there who would like give the pitch, or we can just leave it, right? Like, we don't need to have a million things going at the same time. So we're still kind of ramping up the ambassador program. So I think it's perfectly fine for us to just keep that on the list, but not do anything yet.
So I mentioned it last time, and
Yep.
I think I'm going to like talk a little bit about it. As I mentioned, the topics for the survey, I will just like briefly mention it and like talk about it a little bit, but it's not like a big item.
Sure. Okay. So you can cover that. Marco will talk a little bit about it in the survey. Okay. Section. Yeah, I don't think it's like it's not a long thing. It's more just like, hey, we have this in mind. But might actually, if I could probably write up a description of what it might be. So I might PR something like that on that into the initiatives. Here, I'll volunteer to do that. Okay. That takes us to the end of the things that were tagged for the agenda. Any other questions or things? We could loop back and work on the questions a little bit, or I don't know what people think we should do.
I may not have a lot of time, but feel free to work on the question even after I leave. One also key topic is there some specific initiative that the next 10 or us being there are seeing that would make sense for the next 10 to work on that we didn't already discuss? It's not a topic for today or stuff like that, but just after the collaborator summit or using the collaborator summit, do we want to have a brainstorming about what would be great that the next 10 is working on and not being limited to collaborator or getting feedback from the external? Is there some initiative that we spun off, that stopped, that we want to try to restart? Or for example, the performance working group, or stuff like that. That's all.
Yeah, I think it is probably a decent time to say like, okay, there's things going on, but like, what would be our priorities for the next 4 months or something?
Yep.
I don't know if that's like maybe that's just like create an issue and put it on the agenda. Like the meeting agenda. Like I don't know if or you're thinking like a session at the collaborator summit to say like, hey, are there things that people want us to do? I think it would be good to be more specific, like there's a session on collaborator experience, which I think is great. Like that might drive some things to say like, okay, collaborator experience, pain points, here's what we could do. I guess it's like asking the question in that context, is there things that are important to the future of Node?
For example,
Yep.
oh, sorry, I was going to say, for example, we discussed multiple times about let's say the time or financing of collaborator and having people being able to spend more time on specific topic, but for that, there need to be some funding or something like that. Is for collaborator or for the next year or more of Node.js, do we want something that would be about how can Node.js with the OpenJS Foundation be able to, I don't want to say raise money, we are not a startup and we are not looking for VC, but finding different ways that people would be keen to contribute. For example, we discussed, I remember during an X10 about, I don't remember, not the Open Collective, but the page on the Linux Foundation where people can donate for Node.js or don't remember the name or something. It's something that we want to first.
Right. So I guess I'll say I am poking that forward as I can. So like and this is kind of where it's at in terms of because we did have a session last time and I took it as like, hey, we have agreement. So we
Yep.
have like turned on Open Collective and we have turned on GitHub sponsors. We haven't really promoted them much yet, but we did land like here's our big asks. And so now I'm kind of working with, and actually have a session with Claudio today to say, like, how would we get a sponsors page onto the Node.js org website?
Okay, cool.
And you can see in there, I put together like a crayon, almost not quite a crayon based thing of what it would look like, but I put together my first cut at, like, hey, here's what that would look like. All the TSC members have seen it, and, like, nobody was like, hey, no, that doesn't look good. So now it's in that public discussion. And so I'm moving forward on, like, how do we get that in place? And then I see that as like, hopefully this is like, if people, what we still need to figure out is, like, will organizations care enough to say, like, yeah, okay, well, I'm actually going to provide some funding then, right? But this is the part I'm focusing on to sort of get, this is the next step in the funding story. And once this was there, then I would say, like, we need to figure out a social media promotion of, like, hey, you can sponsor us now, and here's our asks. But I think getting the website in place first is, like, as the first kind of, like, well, what do you get in return? Well, like, if you contribute enough, you end up getting on the pages here, right? And
Yep.
so I guess all to say is, like, I think I know what I can do to move this forward. If people have more time, like, maybe we can get together and brainstorm and stuff. But, like, so that's like, so I guess what I'm saying is, like, I don't think going to the general collaborators to find out more ideas until we've figured out ourselves how to finish these first steps is gonna necessarily move us forward too much. But we
Okay.
could set up like, I do think at some point it would be good to send up, like, a group, find a group of people who are interested in trying to work on the funding side of things. Like, how are we gonna promote this? Are there people interested to help work on the website, help go find companies who might be interested? And because there's lots of work there to be done. So actually, I think the other thing that would be good is, like, can we find people who are like, hey, yeah, I'm willing to spend some of my time working on it.
Makes sense.
Okay. So, but maybe that does make me think that I didn't do a good enough job of, somewhere in next 10 here. I'm trying to find this. I'm going to open an issue, like, funding, create new issue. Okay. Blank issue right there. We go. Funding for Node.js project. Node.js project. Status update. So I'm gonna create that as an issue that shows up, and I'll tag it for the agenda so that we can kind of, like, label TSC agenda, not TSC agenda, next 10 agenda. Current proposal for websites, because we haven't had a lot of people jump into that discussion issue. So definitely doing some work to make sure it's visible would be good. Also looking for people interested in contributing to moving the funding.
So I'm sorry, I have to jump a bit early.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will be working, just really quickly, I will be working, I think, today or tomorrow on some of the questions, but feel free to already add comment or other stuff like that, and I will review and integrate them.
Sounds good. So I don't know, like, Marco and Duck, do you think we need time to look at the questions first, or does it make sense for us to spend this time working on it?
I think we can start working on it.
Okay. So
me
let
too.
me find the questions. Yeah. Okay. Next 10. We've got the pull requests. Okay, so I can probably share. Okay. Hopefully I shared the right one. Okay, so we can just sort of work through the questions and we can talk about make comments and stuff. So where are you from? Countries, lift if possible, or open question, right?
Yeah, I think wait, I'm muted. No, okay.
No,
So
you're
I think
good.
we
Yeah.
should like keep the like which countries are you from? We should definitely keep it like a bit of the anagraphic questions. We should keep it. Someone like wanted to ask if English was the first language.
Yeah, I agree. Like that's a good like okay. So maybe I will not put that there. Cancel. So it's
I
based.
mean, if we really wanted to do the like fancy, we could internationalize the just the question and leave the answer like um, in because like the options are usually technical terms that do not need translation.
I think like we need somebody who's going to volunteer to translate and that like that seems like more work than
Oh yeah,
like unfortunately we it's we're trying to do this like without necessarily asking the foundation to, and even in the past when they were really involved, I don't think we ever translated it. So
okay.
I think the questions about language proficiency though are a good one, right? Like if we ask and we find out that like 99% of people say they don't speak English, then it would be like, oh, wait a second. Now I know it might be self-fulfilling and that people might not take the survey, but that might be something to bring up at the collaborator summit to see how strongly people believe on that. I think there's been lots of discussions as well, like that, translation of things isn't always helpful. Like the reality is you kind of need to speak English, and sometimes translating has made things worse, which might factor into this. Anyway, probably just something to.
Yeah, I agree.
So the one on language proficiency, like we could say like one or a few, right? But add ones about language proficiency. So what would be like you know, are you fluent in English? Right?
We can put in IELTS scores in there as a scale, maybe.
So put in what the
IELTS score. The,
Like, how would you rank yourself from 0 to 10?
okay,
yeah.
right. Because yeah, one question would be nice. How would you rank your English proficiency? Say scale. So we could just say like selection box 1 to 10, with 10 being the highest. And maybe it's 0 to 10. Although 0 0 if you're taking the survey might not, but anyway, still it's probably best to be like, okay. So that's good. I'm just looking at the last year's sorry, I'm just trying to find the Node.js next 10 just to see that we can compare surveys 24. Okay, the last one said, where do you currently live?
Yeah, we can.
It makes sense to keep that consistent.
Where are you from, or what do you mean? Where do you currently
Well, I'm
live?
just looking at the last survey.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think we should keep that consistent.
Well, it's interesting, like what was in our doc said, where are you from? But then in the actual survey, it said, where do you currently live?
Mm.
But I'm thinking we might as well keep that consistent, right?
Yeah, we should definitely keep it consistent.
Okay. So we really want a list of countries, right?
Yep.
Okay. So what was it last time? I can't remember actually, because it's interesting. So we've got anyway, I'll leave it as the same thing. Okay. Then how long have you been working with Node? How long have you been working Node.js? Numbers list from 0 to 10 plus. And this one was where, okay.
Yeah, we should. I mean, Node has been around for
Yeah.
16 years, so we should like.
Yeah, although like at some point, do we get that much more value from knowing whether it's 13 or 14 years, right?
I mean, maybe right now, no, but like I expect in the future, like 10 years and 20 years would
Okay,
be
so we
a
just
large difference.
change that to 0 to 15 plus, or
Yeah, 15, I think it's enough.
okay. What kind of organization are you working in?
I think we can keep this as it is.
There were a few, I think, that like people write in, so we might look at, let's actually, because I think we talked about that. Let's look at the survey results. Okay, I guess that's what I had in, but maybe it was here. So there was a lot of government.
Okay, let's add the government.
Just looking to see if there's any other major. The other question I think we had is that there was like overlap between these, but we don't necessarily need to figure all that out right this second. So, okay, so then the next one, if working for a company, which sector does your company operate?
I think we missed something here. Like we should look at other and add whatever we missed.
Yeah, there were quite a few, like I can see there was quite a few well, there's like 4 which were advertising or related. Well, maybe there's like 7 or 8 that were advertising.
We should call just marketing or like.
Just I'll say there was ones which were like biotech, consulting were a few. E-commerce was quite a large one. Education was quite a large one. Gaming, hospitality, insurance, logistics, retail.
Yeah,
Maybe we should just make a comment here. go through the other from the last survey and add larger categories. I think we can probably do that offline. Because there's I think a bit too many to just try and quickly figure out. Node.js usage.
I think this was fine. I don't remember.
Okay, this one ended up being different. Which of the following best reflects your role regarding Node.js? So the
I
questions
think
were different.
that probably, I don't know, maybe Kylie rephrased them a little bit when
Right.
writing the survey. So,
So we might as well keep them consistent though, right?
yep.
I think the main thing I had here was we got a lot of application developers. So I would have been interested.
You want to split it into, like, break into different.
Exactly.
Okay.
Like I might break this into front end.
Backend and tooling.
Yeah. Because I think from the survey we got like, I don't know, it was like 70% that, right? So it would be good for a little bit more breakdown. I'm just looking to see if there was much write-in. There also was like, I guess there was like full people, some people put in like there's some all of the above, but like there's also like I don't know if there can be like a multi-select. And how does that help us?
So they are full stack.
Yeah, like full stack was another one, right? Like we could put it in as something like
Yeah, let's do full stack.
so that would be both.
Okay.
Okay, that's
Are you part of an organization with investments in Node.js? I think I don't remember this question.
yeah, I think that might have gotten stripped out.
Yep.
Are you part of a group? No. Okay. What is your use case? You're right. That's a new one. So maybe that's a new question. Because I don't see that in the last one.
But like I don't understand like, does your organization invest in Node.js with funding, or like, is that the meaning, or like donate
Yeah,
to Node.js?
I'm not quite sure.
I would like expand to, is your, like, are you aware that Node.js like you can fund Node.js development through this blah blah blah? Does your organization like funds?
Right.
Like, I think the survey is a good way to like publicize the fact that we
Yep.
accept money. Like you
Yep.
have to read it.
Right. So where would that best fit in? I'm just looking. I might put that closer to the end. So maybe like,
Maybe we can ask a follow-up question that are they an individual sponsor of Node.js?
okay,
Yeah.
it's a good idea. I think that's good. I could use a few minutes before the TSC meeting, so I'm gonna suggest
Yeah,
close out at this point. And that was a good start. If we continue to work through that in the async, and we can do it in the next meeting, that'd be great.
sure.
Yeah.
So thanks to everybody for attending, and thanks for anybody who's watching on the live stream. We'll see you in GitHub and next time. Thanks.
Have a good day.